Okay, welcome. In the interest of time, I think we'll just get started. Before we do start, I wanted to say that at the end of the talk, one thing I really enjoy is personally getting questions from people and having sort of a conversation out of that. So if you don't mind, I'd prefer people to speak their questions, and we'll give the microphone instead of using the app to send them. And that way I can also get feedback from everyone and see who asks what, and it's sort of a nice feeling. So today we're going to talk about the Bengali language. I'd like to preface by saying that I'm by no means an expert in this language, but I have a high level of enthusiasm for it. I've sort of studied off and on over the years and have never really given it like proper time, but in the last few months I've sort of been focusing on it more. And I've noticed in coming to Polyglot events that it's pretty rare that I encounter anyone who's studied Bengali or speaks Bengali every now and then, but all in all, for such a large language, it seems a bit underrepresented in this circle. So that was sort of my main motivation for wanting to talk about it today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some basic facts about Bengali, a bit about Bengali culture and notable Bengali people, and then we'll get into the language a bit. And basically I want this to be an advertisement to pique interest in everyone to take an interest in Bengali and maybe start studying it. So the language is called Bangla in Bengali, and a lot of people use that word when talking about it in English as well. Some basic facts: it has like 250 million first language speakers and another 20 million second language speakers. That puts it at the 7th most commonly spoken language as a native language in the world, which is really surprising for some people, because a lot of people have never even, maybe in the West, have never heard of Bengali or have never encountered it. It's an Indo-Aryan, in the Indo-Aryan branch of the Indo-European language family. It's part of the Eastern Zone Magadhan languages, so like Bengali, Assamese, Oriya. And these languages developed out of Magadhi Prakrit, and Bengali emerged around 1000, 1100, 1200 or so as a distinct language. It's written in the Eastern Nagari script, which we'll take a look at. It has some similarities to Devanagari, but it's its own thing. And the closest relatives to Bengali are Assamese, Sylheti, Rangpuri, Chittagonian, Rohingya. Some of these languages, like Sylheti and Rangpuri, are often mistakenly lumped in with Bengali as dialects, but I think people generally would consider them to be separate languages. So where is Bengali spoken? It's spoken in Bengal, logically. So it's this region here. It's also spoken in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. In the map here, you can see sort of a darker shaded area that is Bangladesh, and then to the west of that is West Bengal in India, and in some of the northeastern states in India, Bengali also has a presence. Zooming in on Bengal again. So it's actually not a particularly large area, but it is full of people. There's a huge population in this region, and it has a very large number of speakers, as we've seen. This is a picture of Kolkata. So another reason I think Bengali might be of interest to polyglots in particular, a lot of people here have probably heard of International Mother Language Day. It's a holiday celebrated on the 21st of February, I believe. And it was based off of the struggle for language rights for the Bengali language in Bangladesh, the Bengali language movement in the 1950s. So basically, after India won independence and the country was partitioned, it was split in between India and Pakistan. And what is now today Bangladesh was originally East Pakistan, and it was ruled by a government in the West that spoke a different language, had nothing to do with the daily lives of people in present-day Bangladesh. And so this created a situation where people were feeling linguistically and culturally underrepresented, and that led to the Bengali language movement in the 50s. It was a student uprising, there was a lot of bloodshed, violence, but eventually Bengali was recognized as an official language. Moving a little further ahead, people took it one step further and it became the independence movement for an independent Bangladesh. In Dhaka, there's this monument, the Shahid Minar. It's in commemoration of those killed in the Bengali language movement. There's a lot of history around this, but to keep it short, it culminated in the Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971, and Bangladesh became an independent country. So as we saw, the name of Bengali is Bangla, and Desh means country. So the name of the country is actually Bengali language country. So I don't think anyone could really talk about the Bengali language without mentioning Rabindranath Tagore. He's probably like the foremost cultural icon for all Bengalis. He was a poet, writer, composer, artist. He is sort of claimed and appreciated by both Bangladesh and West Bengal. And his lyrics were actually chosen for the national anthem of both countries. And his sort of, well, he has many claims to fame, but one of them is that he won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913 for Gitanjali, which was a collection of poetry. So he's sort of gotten a lot of, he had a lot of international attention in his lifetime and continues to have a lot of respect around the world. And so this is a statue that I found in Havana in Cuba of Rabindranath Tagore, so just to show how wide his influence has been. So I'm going to play a little sample of a recitation of one section of a poem from Gitanjali, so you can get a bit of a feel for the sound of the language.
আমি হেথায় থাকি শুধু গাইতে তোমার গান দিও তোমার জগৎ সভায় এইটুকু মোর স্থান আমি তোমার ভুবন মাঝে লাগিনি নাথ কোনো কাজে শুধু কেবল সুরে বাজে অকাজের এই প্রাণ আমি হেথায় থাকি শুধু গাইতে তোমার গান
So that's Bengali. I want to move on and talk about a few more famous Bengalis, important Bengalis. I might breeze through a few of them in the interest of time, but we'll see how it goes. So Lalong Shah, or often just referred to as Lalong, is another famous Bengali. He lived to be like 118 years old or something like that. He was born in 1772. He was a philosopher and mystic, a baul, which is sort of like a traveling poet in Bengali culture. His philosophy sort of embodies the principles of Sufism or Bhakti, but he rejected religion and caste, and he is followed by both Hindus and Muslims as well. A lot of his philosophy has to do with self-cultivation, devotion, love, and today there are still bauls who travel around and sing his songs, recite his lyrics. This is his tomb in Kushtia in Bangladesh, and once a year they have a festival to celebrate the anniversary of his death. I was lucky to be there one year, and the amount of people was really unbelievable. People came from all over Bengal to visit the tomb, and everyone could sing and recite his poetry, lyrics. It was a pretty impressive event, so he's a very influential person. This is a picture of bauls, of the sort of traveling mystics. Another notable Bengali is Sri Aurobindo. He was an independence leader against the British rule, turned yogi and guru, He wrote a lot when he was imprisoned for his independence work. And if anyone has ever been to or heard of Auroville in the south of India, it's named after him. Another influential Bengali was Begum Rokeya Sakhawat Hussain. She was born in 1880. She's sort of considered to be like the pioneer Bengali feminist. She advocated for women to be educated and for women's rights. And she insisted upon writing in Bengali, even though a lot of upper-class Muslims at the time stressed education in Persian and Arabic. But she also insisted on writing some things in English to prove that women could be educated and internationally relevant. So some things she wrote were like a short story called The Sultan's Dream, which is like a sci-fi feminist utopian story from the turn of the century. So she's pretty awesome. People have probably seen this book, Paramahansa Yogananda, or Paramahamsa Yogananda in Bengali, famous guru. Ashima Chatterjee was the first first woman to be awarded a Doctorate of Science in India, also Bengali. Ravi Shankar is Bengali. Not a lot of people know. Satyajit Ray or Satyajit Roy is a filmmaker. His films talk a lot about social developments and social problems in Bengal, particularly in and around Kolkata. Really, really beautiful films. And he's had a lot of international notoriety as well, particularly for the Apu trilogy, which is a three-part story of a boy growing up into an adult through processes of social modernization in Bengal. There's also really popular authors like Humayun Ahmed is a beloved Bangladeshi writer, director as well. Taslima Nasreen is a poet, but more recently a writer speaking out for human rights and in support of feminism. Her writing has been so powerful and controversial that she's been exiled not only from Bangladesh, but then also from India later on. But she continues to speak out and write. This comes to another issue that's sort of been in the media in more recent years with bloggers in Bangladesh who are mostly writing about atheism or human rights or freedom of expression having been attacked by right-wing religious extremists, attacked and killed in many instances. And in 2013, there was a long string of incidents that happened. And so I bring this up not really to mention something negative, but more to show that how important the written word is culturally, that people will still put their lives on the line to express themselves and to push progressive issues. And so the Bengali language, I think, is still very, very relevant today. This is a picture of the Kolkata Book Fair and the Dhaka Book Fair. Book fairs are also a really important thing. And so, yeah, again, just to show the sort of cultural esteem for language and education that Bengalis tend to have. So, moving on, we'll look at the language itself. So as I mentioned, it's written in the Eastern Nagari script. There are quite a lot of similarities with Devanagari, which is used to write Sanskrit, Hindi, Marathi, other languages. Like all of the Brahmic scripts, at least as they're used in India, when you write one consonant, it comes with an inherent vowel. So in most languages, it's just a. So if you write k, you're actually writing ka. It comes with the vowel built in. Other vowels you sort of indicate with extra marks. A difference with Bengali is that the inherent vowel is o. So it gives it a bit of a rounder, different sound. So here we have on the top row the Eastern Nagari script with different vowels put onto the letter k. And for comparison, Devanagari below. The vowels don't match 100%, but it's pretty close parallel. So here in the middle column, you have the Bengali letters, and on the right-hand side, it's Devanagari. So just to show a little bit of difference, but also similarity between the two scripts. We have O, To, and Go. Po, Jo, Lo. So you can see the basic shapes are, quite similar. I find Bengali to be a little more flowery. We have To, and No. But then there are letters that are, quite a bit different, and so it's not really the same writing system, but definitely accessible for anyone that knows Devanagari. So some common words that we might use in English, but they're Bengali versions. So karma in Bengali is kormo. So you have this O inherent vowel. Dharma or dharma is tormo. Buddha is buddho. So you can often identify Bengali by this inherent O vowel. It's one of, I find there to be two phonological characteristics that sort of distinguish Bengali and give it a sort of softer, nice sound. This is one of them. Another one is that we have three sibilant letters, we'll say, coming from Sanskrit. So there's S, Sh, and Sh. In Sanskrit, they're distinguished, but in Bengali, most of the time, they're all realized as a palato-alveolar fricative, so sh. There is like a s allophone that sometimes comes into play in certain letter combinations, but it doesn't change the meaning or anything. So I'm just going to play a little excerpt from BBC Bangla. It's just a little headline, but I think it demonstrates the use of these two characteristics quite well.
স্পেনের বাস্ক অঞ্চলে কয়েক দশক ব্যাপী সশস্ত্র স্বাধীনতা সংগ্রামের সময় সহিংসতার জন্য দুঃখ প্রকাশ করেছে বিদ্রোহী গোষ্ঠী এটা। এক বিবৃতিতে যেসব নিরপরাধ মানুষ এই বিরোধের বলি হয়েছে তাদের কাছে ক্ষমা চাওয়া হয়েছে। 1959 সালে প্রতিষ্ঠিত এই সংগঠন আগামী মাসে নিজেদের বিলুপ্তি ঘোষণা করবে বলে ধারণা করা হচ্ছে।
So a lot of sh. Very important sound in Bengali. So looking at some more familiar words that most people know, so Sanskrit in Bengali is Sanskrito. And the greeting namaskar, namaskar. Sari or sari, like the dress, is a shari. And the instrument sitar is shetar. Another interesting thing that happens is with consonant clusters in Bengali. So generally what will happen is you'll have a germination on the first consonant, meaning it'll be pronounced longer. And then in a lot of consonant clusters, you'll pronounce the rest of the consonants included in the group. But in many of them, you pretty much only pronounce the first consonant except elongated. So for names like Saraswati, in Bengali, it's Saraswati. And Satyajit Ray, his name in Bengali, pronounced properly, is Shottojit. And this consonant cluster in the name Lakshmi is really reduced down to Lokki. And Padma, the river, in Bengali is Podda. So moving on to a couple other things that I just particularly like about the Bengali language. It has classifiers. So classifiers are affixes that sort of categorize things based loosely on different properties that those things have. They're used kind of like articles. They can express definiteness or even indefiniteness. And they're sort of similar to measure words, like how you would use them in Chinese or in other East Asian languages. There may be an influence from neighboring Tibeto-Burman languages, and I think this is probably likely because in Assamese they also use classifiers but to a greater degree, and Assamese has more proximity to neighboring Tibeto-Burman languages, so it seems to make sense, but I haven't found anything definitive on the subject. So the most commonly used classifier is ta. It can also manifest as to or te due to vowel harmony situations. Basically, it's like g in Mandarin. It's the sort of general used classifier. So if you put it together with ek, meaning one, so akta, one thing. It's sort of like iga or yako in Chinese. Is mango, so akta one ta mango, so one mango. If you just attach it directly to the noun, amta, it's the mango. So in Cantonese, you can do this with measure words. You can say like go mango would be like one mango or the mango. With du, number two, duto two mangoes. Akta boro one big mango, with boro being an adjective to describe it, or you just add it on to the adjective borota, the big one. So it sort of functions in, sort of serves the purpose of an article. There's also ti, another commonly used classifier that is quite similar to ta, but it gives things a smaller, cuter feel. It conveys affection. So boy is book. If you say ekti boy, it sort of gives the feeling of like a small book or an endearing book, something like that. You could also say ekta boy, just a book. Meiti, the girl. Mei is girl. And moving on, there's also one for people, Jon. So we just saw meiti, but because it's like a child, you would use di. It's sort of like gives it the cuter feel. But for adults and other people, Jon is appropriate. So Akjon Bhadrolok, a gentleman, or Amradujone, both of us, we two persons. You can even add it onto a question word, koto, how many? Koto Jon, how many people? So that's also similar to like to Chinese. You could say jiwei, jiga. Kana is another one for inanimate flat objects. So at kana boy. So again, we can use boy. You can use kana with boy. This use might, I think, sort of emphasize the flatness or the physicality of the book. Du kana mach. So fish as food, as they're flat on a plate. Also use kana. Du kana hat, two hands. And at kana muk, you use it for face. So one flat thing of face, as it were. And it occurred to me that you also use, in Chinese, you use yi zhang lian, like zhang is also the measure word for flat things. So it's some sort of weird parallel. I'm not suggesting they're related, just fun coincidence. Lastly, I think the real fun in Bengali is with verb constructions. So tenses and conjugation actually are pretty straightforward in Bengali, but the way different verbs get combined together in different participle forms, there's like an endless combination of things that you can do to express different shades of meaning, and I find it really, really interesting. So I just picked one, which is compound verb constructions. So this is when you use two verbs. The first verb will be in the form of a perfective participle, so sort of having done something. And then you add a compound marker verb, and that will be conjugated as appropriate for the sentence. So these compound markers are things like come, go, move, rise, fall. They're all words that indicate some sort of movement or direction. And we'll take a look at how they add meaning. So if you use the word pera to return, its perfective participle is pire. So if anyone knows Hindi, pir is a cognate. So you can use this verb either with jawa, to go, or with asha, to come, and it gives a very logical meaning. So ami pire jabo, I, having returned, will go, means I will return, meaning I will go back somewhere. If you use it with to come, ami pire ashpo, I return will come, means I will return here. I will come back here. Very logical. Another sort of logical one, you can use the words to give and to take to sort of express the direction or the intent of the action. So for whom you're doing this thing. So we're going to use the verb, the participle baniye, which is prepare, the perfective participle for to prepare. So amicha baniye diechi. If we use it with to give, then I'm preparing tea, or I prepared tea and gave it, meaning I prepared tea for someone else. Amicha baniye niechi with the verb to take, meaning I prepared tea and took it, means I made tea for me. So rather than, like in other languages, you might use some sort of prepositional phrase or maybe a object pronoun or something like that. In Bengali, oftentimes you use compound verb constructions to express this kind of thing. And sometimes they don't necessarily make logical sense. So this is an example I just took straight from the grammar book Bengali by Hanurut Thompson, because it's a really good example with the verb pora, to fall. So you can say, she gach theke poreche. He fell from the tree. So he, from the tree, fell. Perfectly fine sentence. But if you say, she gach theke pore gache, he fell from the tree, went. You use the verb to go as a sort of directional on the end. Her explanation is really good. Both sentences mean he or she fell off the tree, but the second sentence sounds more natural, more idiomatic, more complete, and adds, if anything, the bump of the landing. So, she gach theke pore gache. I think rhythmically it fills in the sentence, it sounds more natural, and I get this sort of correction from Bengali speaking friends all the time that I'll say a sentence in a very plain way and say, okay, that's okay, but you should really say it this way, and it's always adding some sort of construction like this. Another example, so kora, to do or to make. Kore is the perfective participle. So if you say without any compound construction, amikajta korechi, so I have done the work, just straightforward. But if you add fela, to throw, at the end of it, amikajta kore felechi, so I, having done the work, threw, it means I finished the work. So you're not literally throwing anything, but it does evoke some sort of image, and I think this is a really nice sort of feature of the language. Some other kind of more idiomatic usages, you can use ota or pora, so to rise or to fall, to kind of convey like suddenness in an action. So she heshe utlo, so he having laughed, rose, means he burst out laughing. Shop sposhto hoye utlo, everything rose up clear, everything became clear. So everything having been clear, rose. She hotat eshe poreche, so he came, and then you add fall on the end to emphasize the suddenness. He suddenly arrived. And then this last one I really like, because you have ute, to rise, and then porlo, fell. And it means she ute porlo, he suddenly got up. So the porlo has nothing to do with falling, it's just to indicate the suddenness of the action. Yeah, so looking at everything that we talked about today, like cultural influence of Bengali speakers, and the amount of people speaking Bengali in the world, it sort of brings up the question again, why is Bengali not spoken more outside of the region of Bengal? Or why is it not learned more? And I have some ideas on that, but I'm also curious to hear if anybody has anything to add. So from my perspective, I would say that Kolkata was the seat of the British government during their occupation of India, and so English has had a long history there. It's widely spoken by a lot of people in the education system, and so already I think when you have a large population of people that speak English, it puts the local language at a disadvantage as far as outsiders go. I would say also that economy plays a huge role. So Bangladesh is one of the poorest countries in the world, and the economy of West Bengal is not so great either. And so this creates a situation where a lot of people leave and they go elsewhere for work or for studies or things like that, and that certainly doesn't help the situation of the language. But resources are another issue. There are resources out there to learn Bengali, but maybe not so many. Yeah, if anyone has any ideas as to why in our community, in our circle, this language doesn't really get its due attention, I'd love to talk about it. So here are just a few resources that are out there. It's not a ton of stuff, but it's definitely enough. So out of the courses on the top row, I would say I like the colloquial Bengali series the best. And on the bottom, the two green books are actually written by the same author. They're both grammars. I like the one put out by Routledge. I just like its organization. It's a little more thorough. And there's also media that's readily available. Protomalo is like a Bangladeshi newspaper. You can get headlines in Bengali in your newsfeed really easily. BBC Bangla has lots of audio to listen to. So there's definitely stuff out there. So ধন্যবাদ. Thank you very much. I have a blog, Collectania Linguistica. I haven't put anything about Bengali on it yet, but I do plan to. So if you want to check that out, then that would be great. And we can do questions now.
Thank you. So does anyone has a question? Oh.
Hi. So when you say that it's not spoken outside of the region, do you mean by foreign learners? I mean, language, or because I mean the diaspora, the community, they speak
for sure
all around the world.
There are huge communities in diaspora, but I guess what I'm referring to is within like the community of enthusiastic language learners. Not too many people are learning Bengali. Yeah.
Yeah, but on the camera probably not.
This may sound like a very, very stupid question, but is it written left to right or right to left?
It's written left to right.
Left to right. Yeah. Thank you. Because I was trying to work out this. I was trying to work out how they were connected, and I couldn't quite do it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. In the meanwhile, okay. I ask mine later.
Okay. So there are three things that are very similar to Chinese. First, when you're talking about laughing and rising. Like this rising thing is very similar to 想起来. Second thing is the measure words, of course, and the third thing is putting two verbs onto each other, and something like verb to do another verb, and then it's also like in Chinese 我走路上班. Like you don't put anything like to in English between the. Are these coincidence or? Has it something to do with Chinese?
I would say I don't think there's really a direct relationship, but I think this kind of construction is actually not that uncommon in the world. Sort of using different participles to convey one part of the sentence or one meaning, and then finishing it off with like another verb or a conjugated verb or something like that. But yeah, I also noticed this sort of directional thing in Chinese, like, yeah, sort of, yeah, 看上去, or, you know, these sort of like directional verbs that are also used. It's very similar. Yeah.
I was wondering a bit about the relationship between Hindi and Bengali, because Hindi obviously is national language in India, and this part of Bengal, which, as you mentioned, is in India. Are there particular situations you've noticed in which it's more common than at other times for Hindi words, Hindi constructions, structures, to actually be used by Bengali-speaking people within sort of in contexts which might be specific to Bengal?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure I have an answer for it, actually. But yeah, he probably does. Thank you.
The speakers of Bengali in India, they use a lot of Hindi words. I'm not sure if they are as prevalent as in India. In Bangladesh, I don't know what kind of forms or words they use over there, but in India we have a lot of Hindi words mixing into Bengali, but when it's written purely, there's no mixing. But while talking, because of, yeah, it's always used.
Thanks.
Hello. Yeah. So it seems like Bengali, kind of like Hindi and Urdu, is split between two separate countries. Do you have a sense of why, unlike Hindi and Urdu, Bengali in both countries sort of maintain this relative unity where they consider it to be one language and don't have as much of a split?
Well, I think that there's an immense amount of identity that's focused on the language itself. And as a part of that, there are a lot of shared cultural icons, a lot of shared literature between the two countries. And so I think that it is sort of unique that there's some rather high degree of like continuity. But yeah, I would basically see that as a result of a strong focus on the language in terms of cultural identity. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll ask mine. How close are Bengali and Hindi? Is there any mutual intelligibility?
I think certain words are definitely recognizable. I wouldn't say that the two languages are mutually intelligible. For native speakers, it might be hard to say because people are, I think a lot of Bengali speakers are exposed to Hindi from a very early age, so even if they maybe don't speak it so well, I think they would probably have an advantage there in terms of having had exposure to the language. But for the learner, I would say there's enough of a relationship that if you know some Hindi, it will definitely help you with Bengali. In terms of grammar, Bengali tends to be a little easier, I would say. Like there's no grammatical gender, and a lot of times plural isn't really expressed in verbs, so it just sort of takes these dimensions of like nitty-gritty things that in Hindi you have to like line up perfectly, and you don't really have them in Bengali. So yeah, but as far as like vocab and structures go, I'd say they're quite similar. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's a question there.
In terms of European languages, I've noticed that German is a language that gives a lot of flexibility for expressing ideas because of its word formation and things like that. So it's particularly good for philosophy, and there are a lot of famous philosophers, modern philosophers from Germany. Would you think that maybe a language like Bengali that would give a similar kind of freedom to express nuanced ideas, and it would lend itself well to philosophy and things like that?
I'm not so sure. I'm sort of the school of thought that people, given whatever language or languages they speak, will find the flexibility that they need to accommodate their ideas. So I don't think that there's necessarily anything inherent in the language that would be a catalyst for like a culture of philosophy or something like that. Yeah, that's just my opinion. But
Okay, no more questions?
Thank you very much. Go learn Bengali.